She left the window open again. That wouldn't matter if it wasn't the middle of January, or if we didn't live 3 stories up. But there it was, wide open. Curtains dancing like they were celebrating something I hadn't been invited to. I stood there in my hoodie, staring at it like it owed me an explanation. There was a coffee mug on the ledge. My mug. The one with the chipped handle she always said we should throw away. Except now it had lipstick on it. Ruby red. She never wore red. Something in my stomach twisted. Not jealousy, not yet. Just discomfort. Like realizing someone's been sleeping in your bed when you weren't home. Which, come to think of it, might not be a bad comparison. I didn't ask her about the mug. I just closed the window, slowly, and placed the cup in the sink. Didn't wash it. Didn't want to touch it. I stared at the lipstick stain for a few more seconds, then turned the faucet on just enough for a thin stream of water to hiss onto the metal drain. I waited. 2 hours later, she came home, hair a little too neat, smelling like something too expensive for our budget. I didn't say a word. She didn't either. That's how we communicated now. Silence, glances, and unexplained laundry. I lay awake that night listening to her breathe beside me, her back turned like always. She was fast asleep, or pretending really well, while my brain replayed that coffee mug over and over. And that window, always open, always just enough to let something in, or let something out. I didn't confront her. I started planning instead. Not revenge, not anything violent. Just change, the kind you don't announce. Because if my happiness wasn't her problem, then neither was what happened next. The next morning, I found a red thread on the floor near the couch. Not red like maroon. I mean blood red. Thin, almost silky, like it came from lingerie. I knew every piece of clothing my wife owned. She hated red. Said it made her look like she was trying too hard. So whose thread was it? I stared at that stupid little fiber for 5 minutes. Didn't touch it. Didn't vacuum it up. I just left it there like evidence at a crime scene. I wanted her to see it. I wanted to see if she'd notice. She didn't. Or pretended not to. She walked right past it barefoot, sipping from a new mug I'd never seen before. White ceramic, gold rim. Fancy. Way too fancy for someone who used to make fun of people who shopped at Crate and Barrel. She caught me staring and said, "What?" Not suspicious. Just annoyed. Like I was the problem for noticing anything. That's how it always went now. Every time I asked something, I felt like I was being difficult, needy, paranoid. And I believed it. That was the worst part. I really thought maybe I was crazy. Until that night. She left her phone on the nightstand while she showered. Normally she took it with her, always. Like it was a piece of her. But this time, maybe she got careless. Or maybe she trusted that I wouldn't dare look. I didn't want to. I really didn't. I'd told myself 100 times that if you have to snoop, the relationship's already dead. But my hand moved before I could stop it. No passcode. That was new. What I found made my chest go hollow. A text thread from someone saved under the name Jay. The last message? Still thinking about last weekend. You looked insane in that red set. Red. Set. Thread. My ears started ringing. I could barely breathe. There were other messages, too. A lot of them. Flirty. Casual. Too comfortable. Like this wasn't new. Like it had been going on for months. Probably longer. I didn't screenshot anything. I didn't delete them. I didn't even touch the phone after that. I put it back exactly how it was, then walked to the kitchen, grabbed a glass of water, and stared out the window for what felt like hours. And here's the part that still eats me alive. I didn't confront her. Not that night. Not the next. Not even after another message popped up the following morning. I stayed silent. Because I wanted to see. I wanted to study her. I wanted to know why. And most of all, I wanted to know what happens when a man who's been invisible for years suddenly starts paying very close attention. So I waited. And watched. And while she laughed on her phone and made weekend plans with her mom, I was setting up something she never saw coming. Because the red thread wasn't the beginning. It was the warning. And I had finally decided to follow it. She started humming again. That was the strangest thing. She only hummed when she was painting, and she hadn't picked up a brush in over 6 months. But now, suddenly, she was walking through the house with that soft, lazy hum. The same melody, over and over. I didn't recognize the tune, but it started to feel like a threat. Not because of the song itself, but because of what it meant. She was happy, and I wasn't part of the reason. That same day, I noticed her laptop was unlocked in the living room while she was in the shower again. This time, I didn't even hesitate. I sat down slowly, like a burglar in my own home. I opened her browser. Private tabs. Recently closed. History wiped clean. Classic moves. She wasn't being clever. She was being cocky. But she missed one thing. Her Google Maps history. I clicked. For trips logged to a downtown hotel. Always between 3 and 6 p.m. Always on a weekday. Always while she was volunteering at the shelter. I clicked on the hotel. Boutique, high-end, the kind of place with a name like The Roost or The Velvet House. The kind of place I'd never taken her, because we couldn't afford it. And yet, there it was. Her digital footprints all over it. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't throw her laptop across the room like in the movies. I just stood up, turned the screen off, and sat down in silence. And that silence, it felt radioactive. Like if I moved too fast, something would explode. That night, she came to bed in a silk robe. Again red. The robe was new. Expensive. I knew because the tag was still in the bathroom trash. I didn't say a word. She climbed into bed, turned away, and within 5 minutes, started snoring lightly. I watched her shoulders rise and fall. I memorized the pattern. And then I got up. I didn't sleep at all. I spent the entire night driving. Not to the hotel. Not to Jay's house. I still didn't know who he was. No, I drove to the lake outside town. The one we used to go to when we were broke and happy. I parked in the gravel lot, rolled the windows down, and just sat there as the moonlight broke through the trees like it was slicing the air open. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I needed to remember who we used to be before all of this started to rot. But when I came home at dawn, the front door was unlocked. And her shoes, the red heels I hadn't seen in a year, were by the couch. She was in the kitchen, dressed like she hadn't been to sleep at all, with coffee already brewing. "You were out late," she said. No emotion, just a statement. "So were you," I replied. And then came the strangest, most painful thing I've ever heard from her lips. She smiled. Not awkwardly. Not nervously. Just like she had finally won something. "I know," she said, and turned away. That was the moment I stopped being confused. That was the moment I knew. She wanted me to know. This wasn't guilt. This was power. And I had just given her the last of mine. I wasn't looking for it. I swear. I was changing the bed sheets. Yes, me. Because she said she was too busy with a deadline. And I noticed something wedged between the mattress and the bed frame. A notebook. Slim. Worn cover. No lock. Just a piece of twine wrapped lazily around it like some poetic afterthought. I hesitated. Maybe that's the last decent thing I did in this whole story. I stood there for a full minute, staring at it, wondering if opening it would make me the bad guy. I mean, I'd already looked at her texts. Her browser. Her map history. I was deep in this now, wasn't I? But something about this journal, it felt more sacred. More real. I opened it. The first few pages were innocent. Grocery lists. Scribbled sketches. Half-finished poems. And then I hit the real stuff. "Dennis thinks I'm still his." It's almost sweet. That line. I had to read it 3 times before it landed. She was writing about me. Not to me. Not even like a diary. More like a study. Like I was a project she was documenting. He's still trying. Still playing husband. I wonder what he'd do if he knew. I flipped through faster. Every entry chipped away at whatever fragile dignity I had left. Mentions of Jay. Of the hotel. Of how easy it had become to lie to me. Of how I had sucked the color out of her life, and she needed to feel alive again. And here's the worst part. I agreed with her. Not the cheating, not the cruelty, but the truth that I had become a ghost in my own marriage. A shell walking around, clinging to something that didn't love me anymore. I closed the notebook and sat on the floor for a long time. Everything inside me went quiet. Not broken, just blank. And then I did something strange. I drove to the mall. I bought a suit. Not just any suit. A sharp, black, tailored one that made me look like someone you didn't ignore. I got my hair cut. Clean shaved. Even bought cologne I couldn't pronounce. It wasn't for her. It wasn't even for Jay. It was for the version of me I was about to become. The one who stopped reacting. The one who stopped begging. When I walked through the front door later that day, she didn't recognize me at first. Literally. She was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone like always, and she looked up, squinted, then smirked. "Well, don't you look like someone who has somewhere better to be?" I smiled. "Maybe I do." She raised an eyebrow. I didn't say anything else. I walked right past her, into the bedroom, and shut the door behind me. No questions. No explanations. Just silence. And in that silence, I did something else. I created a new email address. I started forwarding everything from our shared accounts to it. I made backups of every file on our home computer. I even took photos of the journal, page by page. I didn't know what I was planning yet, not exactly. But for the first time in months, I was planning for me. She thought I was unraveling. She had no idea I was rebuilding. The next week, I played the best role of my life. And I mean Oscar-worthy. I smiled when she spoke. I laughed when she made passive digs at my cooking. I even brought home flowers one night and said they reminded me of her. She didn't thank me. She didn't even ask why. She just moved them to the guest bathroom and said, "They're too bright." Every minute I spent around her felt like acting with a loaded gun pressed to my ribs. But I didn't flinch. I started watching her like she used to watch her clients, the ones who commissioned her illustrations. She'd study their expressions, their posture, even how they held a glass. That's how I began to study her. She tapped her fingers when she lied. She touched her neck when she was nervous. She said the phrase, "I don't remember," too easily for someone who once remembered the name of the waitress we had on our first date. And then, 3 days into my quiet performance, something new happened. She laughed in her sleep. Not a small laugh, not a dream giggle. A full, sharp, smug laugh. It pulled me straight out of mine. I sat up and just watched her, the moonlight cutting through the blinds across her face. I wanted to believe it was innocent. A weird dream. A fluke. But my gut told me otherwise. She was dreaming about him. Not because she missed him, but because she was winning. And I started to realize this wasn't about love. Not anymore. Maybe not ever. This was about control. Her power over me. Her ability to do whatever she wanted while I quietly played house and pretended not to smell the gasoline around my feet. But something changed after that laugh. I stopped feeling like the victim. I started feeling like the observer. And more than that, the narrator. See, the moment I realized she no longer feared losing me was the moment I became dangerous, not physically, not violently, but psychologically. Because I knew what she didn't, I was already gone. I just hadn't packed yet. So I began crafting my exit. Not loud, not explosive. Subtle, strategic. I changed the beneficiary on my life insurance. Quietly moved half my money into a separate account she didn't know existed. One I created years ago when I thought we might open a business together. I canceled shared subscriptions and replaced them with personal ones. I even printed a new set of keys, ones she wouldn't find, and stored them in the glove compartment of a car I had parked 3 blocks away from our place. And still, I kissed her goodnight. Still, I asked about her day. Still, I cooked dinner and folded her laundry like some loyal golden retriever who didn't know his leash had already been cut. But late one night, around 2:30 a.m., something happened I hadn't expected. She came into my office. I was at my desk, reviewing files for work, or pretending to. I had headphones on, music playing low. I felt her standing there before I turned. "You're different," she said. I turned, pulled the headphones off. "What do you mean?" She crossed her arms. "I don't know. You're calmer. Like, smug or something." I laughed, too convincingly. "Maybe I've just accepted who we are." She watched me, eyes narrowed, then walked away without another word. And I realized she had started to feel it too. The shift, the imbalance, the weight of her games slowly rolling back toward her. The moment I stopped chasing, she started listening for footsteps behind her. That's the thing about control. It feels amazing until the leash is in someone else's hand. And in that moment, I knew. I wasn't holding the leash. I was cutting it. I wasn't looking for proof anymore. I already had it. The texts, the journal, the missing nights, the perfume, the laughter in her sleep. By now, it wasn't about catching her. It was about watching how far she'd take it if she thought I would never leave. But sometimes life throws you something you weren't expecting, not a clue, but a reveal. Something you can't unsee. It started with my name. Dennis Folder. Zip. That was the name of the file on her old backup drive. I had found the drive in a drawer while searching for a spare charger. It was dusty, scratched, and marked with a strip of masking tape labeled 2019 to 2021. I plugged it into my laptop mostly out of boredom. Curiosity, maybe. Nostalgia, even. But then I saw it. A folder named after me. At first, I smiled. I thought, stupidly, maybe it was sweet. Maybe she had kept old photos, memories, love letters. She used to be sentimental, back in the beginning. She once cried because I saved a movie ticket from our first date. That version of her lived in my memory like a ghost I still talk to sometimes. I clicked the folder. What I found inside wasn't sweet. It was a collection of voice memos, screenshots, and photos. Not of me, about me. Notes she had written. Voice recordings she had made while I was talking. Titles like Dennis Meltdown Kitchen, Dennis Passive Guilt, Gaslighting Attempt Number 3. I opened one audio file and heard myself, months ago, telling her I didn't feel seen in the relationship. I was shaking, emotional, trying to explain how lonely I'd become, and she was recording it. Silently. No response, no comfort, just data collection. Another memo was just her voice, calm, analytical. Dennis doesn't seem to understand how exhausting it is to be the only person in the house with ambition. He clings to me like a hobby. I wish he'd cheat on me just so I could leave without looking like the bad guy. I don't remember how long I sat there. I don't remember if I cried. I think I just stopped, like someone hit pause on my brain. And when the world started moving again, I was no longer sad. I was no longer shocked. I wasn't even angry. I was fascinated. You see, all this time, I'd been assuming she was drifting, that she had fallen out of love, that she was impulsive, careless, maybe even ashamed. But no, this wasn't a slow emotional decay. This was a project. She'd been building a narrative, framing me, little by little, brick by brick. So when she finally decided to burn our marriage to the ground, she'd have evidence to show people why it was my fault, why she was justified, why she was the survivor and I was the villain. And suddenly everything made sense. The exaggerated fights, the baiting, the tiny acts of sabotage, moving my keys, deleting my shows off the DVR, saying I forgot things I know I remembered. It was all there to make me question myself, to perform like the man she needed me to be, unstable, bitter, resentful. She didn't just want to escape. She wanted to win. And I realized I wasn't living with a neglectful wife. I was living with an author. And I was just a character in her story. The broken husband. The burden. The excuse. So I sat back in my chair, stared at the folder on my screen, and for the first time in months, I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I finally knew how this story ends. And it's not the way she wrote it. 3 days after I found the folder, I took her out to dinner. I didn't scream. I didn't throw her things onto the lawn or expose her to her family or friends. I didn't burn the journal or confront her with printouts or stage some dramatic hotel bust. No, I asked if she wanted sushi, and she smiled like I had finally given up the fight. That smile told me everything I needed. We went to her favorite place, the trendy rooftop one where the portions are microscopic, the music is loud, and the staff acts like you should be grateful just to be seated. She wore a green silk dress I'd never seen before. Probably something Jay had bought her. I complimented it. She said, I know. We sat. Ordered. She talked more than usual, which was rare lately. She told me about a gallery opening she'd been invited to. She told me she was thinking of going to New York for a week to reconnect with herself. I nodded like a man who understood. I smiled a lot that night. I made eye contact. I asked questions. I paid attention like I used to, not because I wanted her back, but because I wanted her comfortable. I wanted her to feel safe in her control. Because the next phase of my plan only worked if she believed I was still playing my old role, the quiet, heartbroken husband who'd rather die in a bad marriage than sleep alone. And while she talked, I imagined her face when it all fell apart. The account I opened in my name, the one she didn't know about, was growing. I had pulled most of our joint money into it, piece by piece, over the course of 3 weeks. She never noticed. She didn't pay bills. She didn't check balances. She hadn't logged into our bank in years. She just assumed I'd keep everything running. She was right. Until I didn't. I had already met with a lawyer. We signed the papers. I didn't file yet. Not because I wasn't ready, but because I wanted to file last. Quietly. After she made the first move. After she felt like the one in control. That way, when she served me with hers, the scripted documents she probably drafted with Jay weeks ago, she'd be expecting tears. Not a counterclaim. Not a relocation form. Not asset separation with timestamps she couldn't argue. Not screenshots. Not emails. Not receipts. Not a list of every single lie she told that could be fact-checked with her own journal. The meal ended quietly. She leaned in, kissed me on the cheek, mechanical, like a coworker, and said, "You've been good lately." Good. Like a dog. Like a child. Like someone behaving for approval. That word stuck with me the whole ride home. Good. That's what I was to her. Not a partner. Not a person. Just an obstacle that finally stopped moving. But the truth was, I was already gone. The man she thought she was winning against had left the house weeks ago. What sat across from her that night was something else entirely. A version of me she'd never seen and couldn't predict. The next morning, I emailed her Jay. Yes, I found him. I found his real name, his real job, his real girlfriend. That was the kicker. He wasn't single. He was living a double life, just like her. I didn't threaten him. I didn't expose him. I just sent him a message with one sentence and no return address. She's been recording you too. Because she had. There were audio files of him, too, complaining about his life, his girlfriend, his money problems, his secrets, the kind of things that ruin people, especially someone in his position, someone with things to lose. I didn't send them. I just let him know they existed. And just like that, I tipped the first domino. I didn't need to do anything else. I just needed them to turn on each other. And oh, they would. It started falling apart faster than I expected. 3 days after the email, she became jittery, kept checking her phone, pacing the kitchen like there was an invisible fire. She didn't talk much. She started sleeping in the guest room. Her excuse was space, but I knew better. Her kingdom was crumbling, and she didn't know which wall would fall next. She never asked me about the money, never questioned the changed passwords, the canceled subscriptions, the missing files. I think deep down, she knew I was pulling away, but she thought it was emotional. She had no idea it was tactical. And then, just like that, she handed me the divorce papers. Calmly, like a waitress dropping a check. "This is what you want, right?" she said, almost bored. I looked her in the eyes and said, "Yes." She blinked. For the first time in a long time, she didn't have a line prepared. I signed them that night. No drama, no speeches, just a pen and a date. I handed her my counterclaim the next morning, neatly filed, with every asset outlined and accounted for. My lawyer had done a beautiful job. She looked at the envelope like it was a bomb she didn't understand how to defuse. We didn't speak for a week after that. Then she was gone. She packed quietly. No screaming, no crying. Just boxes. I watched from the window as she drove away, and I didn't feel victory. I didn't feel loss either. I just felt stillness. Like the air had stopped buzzing. Like I could hear the birds again. The house felt like it belonged to me for the first time in years. Not because I had won, but because I'd finally stopped playing a game I never agreed to be part of. And that, I think, was the real healing. It wasn't about outsmarting her. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about exposing the truth. It was about reclaiming my time, my headspace, my name. A few months later, I left the city. I moved upstate to a smaller town where no one knew me. I started working part-time for a local nonprofit and teaching coding workshops at the library. I got a dog. I grew a beard. I sleep 8 hours a night now. I go days without thinking about her. And when I do, it's not with bitterness. Just clarity. She was a chapter, not the story. Last week, I walked past a coffee shop where two people were arguing quietly, their hands clenched in their laps, saying everything except what they meant. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to understand them. I just walked by. Free. That's the thing they don't tell you. Sometimes, the most powerful revenge is no revenge at all. It's rebuilding. Quietly. Completely. Without an audience. I didn't watch her world burn. I built a new one without her in it. And this one feels like home.